This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, I was trying to
G-
get your attention to hit it when he was in the middle of that, so that part got recorded, and I didn't know if you caught that or not.
That's okay. That's okay. The good stuff in here when we start talking about. But yeah, we're glad to have you. And this is so. If you have a bullet list questions already, uh,
Audio.
looking at others, and you want to make some comparison, you're welcome to have the floor and ask questions that you have. Uh, goes.
You're,
Let's since we
uh,
got some
is he
quick thing,
breaking
and
up
then
for
just
anybody else?
Everybody
I,
else, yeah.
I thought it was
Yeah.
me.
Every
really,
4 seconds or so.
Yeah, I thought
yeah,
it's. I
that's
started
bad.
shutting stuff down right and left, thinking it was on my end.
So Brian, who do we have here with us today? I'm curious about the crowd.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll do the intros. That's what I was going to try to get at. I'm Brian with Thunder Laser Tech. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
you sound good.
Uh, and then I'll let Loco go next.
I'm Chris, also with Thunder Laser, on the support side as well.
And then
And
Chris, where are
I'm
you located?
I'm in Land O'Lakes, Florida.
Okay.
and I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, so I'm not too awfully far. It's still a good
Okay.
little drive to the coast, but in the same region, maybe we get the same weather. So
I actually own a camp up in on the Cumberland Plateau over near Crossville, so
okay,
I'm a
okay,
fan of Tennessee.
awesome, awesome.
yeah. I just got a Bucky's,
Yeah,
but yeah,
and Chris,
I'm Chris. I'm up in Knoxville, so it's not too far from Crossville and all that.
Yeah.
Also in the tech support side.
yeah. So yeah, if you have anything specific that you have to ask, like I said, that's fine. Anything you think of during the course of the thing, just raise your hand, or otherwise we'll probably just run over you. So
Okay.
anyway,
I'm
eh,
I will apologize up front for my questions. One of the thing, by the way, kudos to Thunder Laser because your website is awesome. It has a huge amount of information. You just have to learn to drill a little bit deeper
yeah,
and
a lot of
watch.
rabbit
And
holes.
yeah, there's a lot. So I'm probably going to ask a few questions that are answered somewhere, but forgive me. I'm trying to dig into this a bit for my own personal use and for my client that I'm looking for here. So we're
Sure.
in kind of in the market uh, for those reasons I discussed earlier. If you shall, I just begin to ask a few questions, Brian? Is that
That sounds great to me. Absolutely.
okay? One of the things that I got confused about was that Thunder talks about using hybrid servos, and I don't know what that is. It looked
It's
like a stepper motor to me, but I wasn't
yeah,
sure.
it's not a true servo. It's called a hybrid because it has feedback. So there's an encoder in it, and it's a closed loop stepper. It's a
Okay,
hybrid
so
in that it performs probably twice as good as a standard open loop stepper, and maybe a full servo would behave a little bit better. So it's kind of like the mid range.
So it's a closed loop stepper then,
It
basically.
is.
Okay, I got you. That makes sense. Um, when I was looking at the details on the lift table, I couldn't really figure out what kind of screws those are. Are those Acme threaded screws that lift the mechanism to lift the table, the work table?
I don't know if they're exactly Acme threads, but that's what they look like, Acme rods.
Okay,
And they vary
so
in size based off your machine.
it's not a ball screw or anything like that. It's a square threaded Ac- Acme like
Yeah.
thread. Okay. And
See if
it
we'll get you
appeared
a
to me that
picture.
y'all are using two servos that are cogged belt driven, a servo for each side of the machine. Is that right for the lift?
We w- we were, but
Used to.
since we were driving them with the same driver, we noticed they were still getting out of step a little bit with each other. So we went back to a single motor system and one belts to maintain uh, the verticality or the
Yeah.
evenness of the bed. Mhm. The older machines, some of them did have two motors, the 51s and
Okay.
63s, I think. I think my 35 even does. So, but they discovered that it's best to just have one motor.
Yeah. Is the system down there pretty easy to adjust? And if the bed gets out of, if it
It
needs
is.
some alignment?
There's a tensioner. Yeah, there's a tensioner down there where you can loosen it up and actually just turn, the
Okay.
all threads, the lead screws until you get them where you want, and then tighten it back down. So yeah, there's facilities there to make that easier, so that you can use a tool to do it.
What what are y'all's opinion about laser tubes? The two that I think that are reasonably well known are RISI and SPT, and I think you're using mostly SPT. Is that correct?
Mostly. Sometimes we use RISI, sometimes we use SPT. Right now, the Nova 3580 has a RISI tube in it. All the others are SPT OEM at this time. But that's one thing that I like about Thunder is their QC department and their engineering department are constantly testing the tubes and trying different ones. And we usually don't waver. We don't try other names. We usually stick with SPT and RISI, but they try to match them up the best they can, per machine. So that sometimes can change. Sometimes the RISI's better as far as beam signature and spot size and, uniformity and that kind of thing. And sometimes the SPT, they're all good, but they go through a lot. Matter of fact, on all the tubes, they test them all there at Thunder since they buy so many, and they get to pick the ones they want. They test every single one of them, and then they
Okay.
send the rest of them back, and that's the ones that get sold to everybody else.
Okay. All righty.
So
If I were to do a little bit deeper dive on tube manufacturers, which one of those manufacturers would come out on top of the heap in terms of quality and reputation?
I think they're the same. Personally, I would buy either
Yeah.
one. The Reese's more expensive, but it lasts longer. So, but if you work it out dollar for hour, do you just replace a cheaper one more often or pay more and replace it a little less often? Arguably, Reese is supposed to be the industry standard, but we found over the years that the SPTs perform equally well or sometimes even better, depending on how they're set up, because we calibrate all of our machines, to the tubes and that kind of thing. So they do a
Okay.
lot of thought to that.
I think that, as I remember, the Thunder's using a Ruida controller. Have y'all looked at Trosin?
We have, or I have. I like the Ruida better. And we have custom firmware, and it's written for Ruida, and that's what they've always used. So I don't know if they're, gonna go a different route. I prefer the Ruida maybe just because I've been using it for so long. Um, but they're comparable. We use a special firmware, and we also use the Y channel for our rotary instead of or the U axis or A channel
U channel.
instead of the Y axis. So that you don't have to take the Y-axis out of play. On a lot of lasers, you either have to turn it off or flip a switch or power it down to put the
Yeah.
rotary on and power it back up. And ours are hot swappable. It's plug and play.
Okay. Uh, one thing that I've been confused a little bit about, and as I've been looking recently, was I noticed that CloudRay has begun to promote Thunder Laser, and they're calling it a CloudRay Thunder, and they actually sell them here. What's going on with that?
That's
And
probably the Odin machine. That's our RF tube machine. That's our answer to Epilog, Trotec, and ULS. Um, it's 2,000 millimeters per second and has an RF US made coherent tube in it. So I think they're doing that to help boost the sales because it's relatively new and they just want to try to saturate the market a little more with it in a couple of other channels than our,
yeah,
primary ones.
I was
what
just
is
on
what's the
CloudRay's
power,
site.
what's the power level on an RF?
It can be 100, 150. You can get them that high. Once you get that high, you're back to water cooled again. Most of the air cooled ones that are using the typical gantry CO2 engraver range anywhere from 30 to maybe 100 watts or so. Ours are
Okay.
6 or 55 actually is the coherent tube.
Yeah, I didn't look deeply enough at that to make that distinction. Yeah, it is. Let's see. Get them pulled up here.
And CloudRay does have the Nova series on there now. I was just looking around.
Do they?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. They used to just have the Odin, so I guess they're going to partner with them on those too.
Yep. If anybody's interested in a 1,000-watt fiber laser, Light Objects got them on discount right now for 45,000. 40, I think 42 for
Still?
the 1,000-watt, maybe. Yeah, 45. Yeah, it's like 40-something thousand off. I don't know if that's a marketing thing, but it's a 4x8 or something like that. It's a massive one. You could have
Yeah,
220, 50 amps.
Marco makes some big machines. He makes a bunch of
Yeah.
custom builds too.
Yeah. So
It looks like we
Yeah,
have Mike and Rich too here. That might be
Yeah.
Mike. I know
So-
Mike, but Rich looks new too.
Yeah, and then of course, Alan, if you have any other questions too, we can keep going or pepper
Yeah,
them in,
sure. I
you
don't
know,
I don't
however
want
that
to
goes.
monopolize all the airtime. Sure, go ahead.
We're just happy because a lot of times there's nobody in here to ask questions, and we end up sitting here in silence, awkward silence.
Ever awkward silence.
So
Rich
one of
turned-
the
Rich
I'll
turned
ask
his mic
another
on.
question until somebody speaks up. I noticed that in some of my studies, by the way, Tommy and Lois, I think I've seen a YouTube or so that y'all have done. Is that right?
If it's the Angry Craftsman, then yes, that's me.
Okay.
How
That's
fitting.
I got it. One of the things that I noticed in that in one of your YouTubes is that you acquired a refurbished machine, and I wanted to ask about that.
Right ahead.
Yeah. And where are those located? Are those typically in Tennessee? I got the sense that that's
yep.
where they were.
Yep, they'll be with me in Knoxville.
Okay.
He's
so
the
I
refurb
have-
guy. He goes through them all.
Yep.
And
Do you know
so
how long
is
of a
that-
drive it is?
So is that those machines are? How do you know what availability there is in that regard? Do you need to call and ask? Is that?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
sales team they'll reach out to me for what we have, but a refurb machine is one that had generally shipping damage. It's not like we
Yeah.
had a machine that somebody ran for a couple thousand hours and then we brought it back. It's one that had shipping damage from all our wonderful carriers. So then I just basically refurb it, replace mechanical components, check it out, and put it back in service. But availability is whatever they tend to drop off a lift gate or smash at the depot with their forklift, and then it shows up. So there's no planned. We're gonna have a Nova 51 next week.
I got you. Yeah, your answer doesn't surprise me. I just wasn't sure where they were located.
Yep.
Uh,
I've only got
Yeah,
two
find
left at this point.
What, a 63 and a 51?
Mm-hmm.
We don't see too many 24s. Have you even had one yet? Those don't get banged up too bad usually.
Just one. And it was actually had crate damage, but once I uncrated it, it was perfectly fine. Sold that to a fellow I think out of Ohio, and he's rocking and rolling with it.
I just want to
No,
know when
no-
our roll
no
will
fiber.
fall off the truck.
Yeah, me too. A 50 watt would be ideal. I need a 50 watt. Yeah, the Odins, they've not really been mishandled. It's really the bigger ones, the 51s, the 63s, and the 35s. So, how big a machine are you looking for? Alan?
I think I'm looking for two, as I mentioned, and right now, if I'm not certain, probably a 35 and a 51,
Okay.
maybe two 51s.
Okay.
One of the issues that I'm dealing with for the one that I would locate here is floor space. I've got a really nice shop here, but I've got 10 pounds of stuff in an 8-pound sack, so
Understood.
I'm gonna have to do a little bit of shuffling. And I always say when I add another piece of equipment, well, that's it, and then next thing you know, I'm buying another piece. So I got
I feel you
to
there.
yeah, I've moved some stuff out of here to make space. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of the target. We may get one, a larger one for the millworks that I mentioned. Depends on, uh, and that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you. One of the things that I noticed about the Thunder design is that there's a bar that runs across the machine at about the elevation of the work table. And so if I wanted to open that machine up and put a drawer in there and turn it vertically, there's probably enough. If I took the work table out, I could probably make a jig to hold drawers in there to do that engraving that I was talking about. And
Yeah.
so I was wondering, how deep could I go inside the machine if I wanted to stick, say, a half a dozen drawers in there to engrave the side of them?
So there's a catch tray in those now that you may have to pull out or remove to facilitate it, depending on the size of the drawer. I don't have a good measurement on the 51.
I wish I could
I-
remember. We took the knives out, we took the honeycomb out, we slid the drawers out, or we
No.
we
It's
set them on
the
the
crumb
crumb
tray.
tray. But and I've got a picture of it somewhere, but I don't remember what the size of the box was. But I maxed that thing out. I mean, we had
It
to
was a
we had to
chest.
definitely manually focus, and I had frog fuzz to
I did that
focus.
igloo cooler. That igloo cooler I did, that was gigantic on the 51 when I still had the 51. I didn't have a crumb tray. Mine was pre crumb tray.
Yeah, we can get a measurement of the actual, free space that you have in there to work with,
Yeah,
with the honeycomb either lowered or everything taken out. However, we can come up with some more finite numbers for that so you can kind of
So give me
quantify
a
it.
couple minutes. I'll be right back.
There
So
you
why
go.
wouldn't you engrave the wood before assembly versus having you put drawers in there after something's already assembled?
why would you
Sometimes
do that? Because
they're
what they do, this business has two extremely large CNC machines that are made in Italy, and these are enormous. They're like 25 feet long and beds that are 10 feet wide, and so they cut out a huge number of parts every day, and then they assemble those parts. And so you can imagine, depending on how you're making the cabinet, that drawer side may actually work in two orientations. And I think they're going to be picky about what their logo looks like when you open the drawer up. So if you engrave them before you assembled it, it might be a bit of an issue versus doing it after you got the drawer made.
Depending
And
on
so
the
there's,
full range of motion and where the guides are
yeah.
and various things like
So,
that. Okay.
so what I was imagining was uh, taking the honeycomb and the blades out and using the maximum depth of the machine as a possibility, and say putting 6 drawers in there at a time and pressing and have a jig to hold it, and then you just press the button to go for certain size drawers, and it does it after they're made uh, versus trying to do it before you build it. And there you go.
That's a solid walnut chest that Tommy made. And we dropped it right in the machine so that we could
Gotcha.
engrave it for our customer.
Okay. Is
And you
that
said
does
you knew the dimensions of that box, or is that what he's checking on?
So yeah, I don't know what size the chest was, but this was in our 51. And he just ran out to the shop. So for those that are new, we're in our house right now, but our shop is in a 16 by
okay?
24. Or my portion of the shop is a 16 by 24 building that has both my lasers in it. That's right next to the house. So he just ran out there real quick to go measure it. But yeah, we barely had enough room, and I think he's back now.
Okay.
All right. I
And
just
then
wanted
from
to-
a depth standpoint, I believe the 51 is going to have more than the 35.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So
And then
I'm going to
vertical
try to,
height's more than 63.
sorry, Chris, I'm going to try to explain this to the best of my ability. If you leave the crumb trays in, you have 14 inches to the bottom of the nozzle. Now, with that being said, you can adjust that. What do you want to call, what is that, bezel ring or the
The stop
locking
ring.
nut?
Stop ring. Mhm.
You can adjust that to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get an
If
extra
you
half inch or
pull-
so, maybe.
So if you pull the crumb trays out, there's spaces in between the center support and the belt system for the bed.
For the lift.
I-
Yeah.
The lift. It's about yay wide, give or take 6, maybe 12 inches. So like I could take a trunk, turn it up on its side, and I could clear 16 inches.
Okay.
If it'll fit in that depression where the
Exactly.
guards
Yeah,
are
yeah.
not.
I got you.
Okay.
But there's the center support that the crumb trays roll on, slide, or so you would have to clear the 14 or 16 inches, you would have to get it to the left or to the right of center. So
Yeah.
it's not like you have the whole area, but you have a
Yeah.
small area that you can clear 14 to 16 inches with.
Yeah. The 51, the crumb tray is split, right? There are two of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're back to the point that Chris made. You may, with this particular approach, you may be better off just thinking about engraving them before you assemble them. Because if you think about that, you could put a pretty goodly number of drawer sides, the raw stock drawer sides in there, and engrave them in one set, and you'd do it lickety split versus trying to handle the drawers after they're assembled. So I'll talk to Zach about that to make sure
It would
they're
just mean figuring out your orientation or positioning
Yeah.
of it in
Yeah.
advance and having
Yeah.
lefts and rights and that kind of thing, which
Yeah, exactly. So that may or not be a problem. So we'll cross that bridge soon. I suspect that it
thing-
is not a problem. It'd be more convenient to do it after you had them assembled, but it may not be an issue at all. Maybe something I'm worried about that is not an issue.
And before we leave that topic, the crumb trays are dual function. They also protect your belts from the laser. Because just because the laser's past your material or the honeycomb, it does not stop. So the crumb trays double up. So you got to watch for that.
Okay. And
it'll
so
be
those-
defocused, but still could do some stuff.
Yeah, you could cause something like UV damage to the rubber over time, I suppose, I guess, huh? So
Yeah, it'd take a while, but
Alan, just a suggestion. I know you were talking about drawers and sides and whatnot. Engrave the bottom of the drawer bottom before you slide it in place.
yeah, Tommy, their habit at the moment is that they're putting that logo on the drawer side near the
Yep.
front, so that when you're in the hotel or the office where they make
makes
this high
sense.
end stuff, you pull it out and you're looking at it. So I think they're probably going to stick to that habit. It's just
The only other thing is to make a wooden plate that gets glued to it that's no thicker than the drawer slides itself. The
Yeah.
metal, if you're using metal slides, that would be another way they could be mass produced at one time and just glued in place once it's built.
Yeah, you could inlay them. You could actually engrave it and then cut it out and then have your CNC router at that time cut the pocket for the inlay and just pop them into place. That may be an option too.
Yeah, could be. Lots of alternatives to consider. One thing that they've got going on with the CNCs is they can't really staff them well to run them 24/7 because of operators. And so their capacity is kind of bumping the upper rim at the moment. And one of the machines needs to be replaced. He's actually, I think, probably issued the order recently for another one to get built. And those get built in Italy and then shipped over. So there's a little bit of lead time to get it, more than weeks. It's months, of course. But anyway, yeah, thank y'all. Those are good ideas, and I can have a discussion with Zach about that. Voltage. Do the 35 and the 51, do you have the option to use 220?
No, not for the U.S.
No.
machines.
Okay. Could you change a power supply and get to the 220? Because it's really
Not-
just
Not easily.
okay.
So, and there's a couple of facets to that. One of them is if we go to work on it later and somebody's converted their machine to 220, we may send them 110 parts because that's all we deal with. So it can cause some
Yeah.
hiccups in the support and diagnosis of things.
Yeah.
But the good news is I understand you probably got a lot of 220 out there and you'd rather use that.
Yeah.
What some people have done, which I wouldn't recommend, is a step up transformer. But those burn up, and that's just not a real efficient way to try to do it.
It's not, that's not a showstopper. This shop has got lots of 220 and lots of 20 amp 110, so it's not a
Yeah, they'll all
problem.
run on the 35 and up are dedicated NEMA 520, 20 amp,
Yeah.
110 dedicated. Now the Nova 24, it'll work on 15 amp, so will the on a standard 15 amp. We still recommend it being dedicated, meaning don't have a fridge or something plugged in the same branch because they daisy chain a lot of those. But yeah.
Let's see. So the pass-through thickness is 0.8 of an inch on Thunders. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, that's for the slot in the rear of the machine. If you're using the front slot and like say a 4-inch head, you can get away with a little bit different stuff, but it's not a true pass through because it's only hanging out the front.
Yeah.
If you do the Loco mod where you cut the bar off on the front, you get a lot more opportunities for the front pass through.
And Tommy laughed about that, so there must be an inside joke. So what kind of mod did you say?
So
It's the Chris
in one
Loco.
of Chris's videos, he's removed that front bar. I have 1 year left before I will remove that front bar because I do not want to void any warranty or potential issue.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare trying to do. So we do a lot of, she does more sheet goods than I do. And it's easier just with 4x8 sheets. That bar gets in the damn way. There's nowhere to, there's no easier way to discuss that. It really gets in the way at times. So we will retrofit it in a year. And that's what I'm giggling about because I think the last time we met, I had a conversation with Loco about that bar specifically.
Yeah, they arrive here, and I get my my angle grinder out, and I just cut it off.
So what's the cross section of the bar? What is it? Is it a rectangular tube?
It is.
Yeah, it's a piece of rectangle tube.
So having a machine shop right over there, I can imagine making some sort of a adapter where I could have it bolt in and unbolt it and take it out, and with a little, it'd still have a stub sticking out probably from each side. I assume that bar is there for structure, is it not?
It is. It is. These things
More
are pretty
likely,
tough.
Yeah, more than likely for shipping purposes. That's the only thing I can see.
Once it gets to you, if you cut it, I mean, he hasn't experienced any ill effects that we know of, so that's actually a good test. But unless the frame happened to be tweaked or something, then when you cut it, it relaxes. Then you might
Yeah.
not want that.
Unless
But
somebody induced some deformation in it that you're not aware of, huh?
right.
Yeah.
But it's actually, and Chris could probably attest to it. It's actually 3 cabinets. You got your 2 side cabinets and you got your back cabinet. I mean, that thing's not moving. It's not thin, cheap China steel. It's actually some thicker gauge metal. The whole thing's built out of. I can't see it flexing or moving or being structurally unsound when you do it.
Brings me to another question. What do you think the thickness of the sheet metal is typically on that machine?
I'm not mechanical to give you a gauge, but I could put a caliper on it.
I'm gonna say I got a
Um,
caliper. I could try to find out.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to
I
do
have
the same
to.
thing, and I was like, yeah.
Hey,
So
I have
then
the
there's.
ridiculously large caliper.
Oh, that's not ridiculous.
That
It's
looks
not
like a 12
ridiculously
incher
large.
there.
Yeah, some of those 4-foot ones are a couple $1,000s. Those are big, expensive. That's
But then
funny.
there's like the top plate that everything bolts to as well. The actual gantry rails that are bolted to the main box and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
It's pretty thick.
2
But they
mil.
still get
2 mil for just the outside sheeting is 2 mil. So
2 millimeters thick.
yeah.
That sounds about right. What gauge is that? Anyway.
That's a good question. The good thing is I have a plasma cutter with a gauge tool on it. 16. It's actually closer to. It's like between 16 and 14 with the coating on it.
Okay.
16 gauge steel, I'm gonna guess.
Okay. So
And I
one
can
of
tell you,
one-
owning other lasers, I could tell you this is thicker than some of the Alibaba specials and some even higher end manufacturer or higher dollar. I'm not gonna say higher end. It's guarantee it's thicker than that.
I know it's thicker than a no-name brand another name brand that starts with a B.
What you saying, boss?
you don't want to mention any names, but the initials are B, huh? Yeah.
It's a lot thicker than our last laser, which was a Boss.
It's just
Yeah.
beefier and just built so much better.
Yeah. The difference between the Thunder and a lot of these machines that you see, especially the higher end ones, they have to bring them in and they get them from another company and then they rework them, which is all fine and good. But ours have been purposely designed and built at Thunder by Thunder, to the US specs on the wires, for instance. You may see people say, don't use the plugs in the back, don't use the factory wiring. And everybody thinks it's because of junk, and it kind of is, but most of those machines are made for 220, so the wire inside only has to be half as thick as it would need to be in the US for 110. So that's really where the rub is, not so much that it's inferior, just that it's not set up for the US market. So
Yeah.
that's why we've got all the tags on the wires and using 16 or what is that, 16 or 18 gauge on the main part of everything in the runs. I don't know. It looks as good as any Allen Bradley panel I've ever looked in, as far as that goes. So
Yeah, I've not been up close and personal with one. I want to do that, but from the photos that I see, it's pretty impressive. It looks like that it was thoughtfully
we can
laid
make that-
out and put together well.
We can make that almost happen.
and they've been working on, the Nova series, if we're talking about that specifically, the gantry system, most everything in it hails from the Legacy series Mars machines. They had linear guides on them at the very beginning. Now I think around 2017 they went to the sealed U-groove rollers, that basically requires zero maintenance. Just keep the gantry clean instead of having a linear rail that you got to clean and repack and lubricate and all of that. So it's a lot less labor intensive. But it's
Is
been
that
the
showing
base
up?
system for it is
Brian,
since.
Can you? Oh, I was guess it'd be Loco. I was gonna say, can you get him to blow his screen up so he can see it easier? But it's on Loco's end to do that. I think.
It's on Loco's end. But they've basically been improving and enhancing the same motion control systems and the same machine for the past 15 years.
Here's my shop advisor came to
Oh,
see her
Yeah.
papa.
You got an awesome shop
Hello,
advisor.
hi.
Hi.
So Brian, on a different note, I got a buddy of mine who's bringing I'm probably going to mispronounce it. Is it called an oscilloscope?
Mhm.
He's
got
bringing
it.
one over to run tests on the two lasers and the different laptops and things of that nature. So hopefully we'll get video footage of that running those tests. I just dread pulling the machines away from the wall so he can get to the backside of them.
That'd
That'd
what's
be
he looking
interesting.
for?
Well, you got to understand, he's an electrician and he's a very special electrician, especially in his own mind. He does a lot of high-end power stuff for businesses and repairs of crap for like nuclear plants and all kinds of weird stuff.
Yeah.
So
So
he's just
he's going to be
wanting
looking
to,
for brownout conditions. He'll probably put a monitor on there and look for ground to neutral swells and all kinds of stuff.
and artifact or
Yeah.
I don't remember, from different laptops, dirty power, clean power,
Yeah, he'll be looking at
all kinds
120.
of stuff. He convinced his boss to let him buy one, so he'll
He
bring
wants
it
to
over and
play.
run a bunch of tests. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have that footage, especially
You
with
can
the whether it's it's safe to, or what the effects are having a computer plugged into the same circuit as the machine.
now,
We
yeah, your laptops have some pretty solid power supplies to them as far as creating clean DC, and they can tolerate a decent amount of noise. But what would be cool is he puts the scope on the signal from the Ruida to the laser power supply and look at that signal under an O-scope.
Yeah.
20,000 hertz is the range for frequency, and then watch the spikes and everything and seeing if you're seeing a nice little square wave or more triangular or something.
If there is something that y'all want tested or y'all think would be interesting, dude, send me an email so I've got
Okay.
it, because I'll forget. And we'll have him run every test under the sun just to help, I don't know, support your product.
and answer
Cool.
some questions. There's some people who have some questions about that stuff. So
Cool. Yeah, we'll take any intel we can get. We like making big long articles.
I know they just need to be in English.
not all of
Well,
us are engineers.
not a lot of
So-
I'll
those
throw one across.
were worse. So they've been Englished a little bit, but still have a little work.
So Brian, you mentioned the quality of, what Thunder's putting in the box in China. I guess if there is some sort of relationship established between Thunder USA LLC and Thunder in China, y'all are not owned by them. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you don't own a part of them. So how do you make sure that they're putting in the box what you need to sell here that doesn't cost your business a bunch of money to remediate? Because there's risk there.
Right.
And
Well, first,
I have some in a prior life. I have some experience with Chinese, dealing with Chinese businesses. It was a pharmaceutical business. It wasn't anything like this, but and I have a friend that was with a company that got all of their products made in China, and it was a fairly large brand. And I'm not going to divulge who it is because I don't think that'd be fair. But it was a substantial brand here in the U.S. that was sold into the leisure market, and they had a hell of a time with with what the Chinese were sending them, particularly during the pandemic. It just got awful. And so how do you manage that? What are y'all doing
Well,
that's special that keeps you out of trouble?
they do all the QC there in China, and they had already implemented that when we Thunder Laser USA came into the space. So that was already in place. If you mean how responsive they are and how good they are at their QC, I'll give you a quick for instance. Everybody was hanging their shirts on these handles on the front of the machines and tearing them, including myself. We got a couple of reports of it. That was enough to send up a red flag. So we told China about it. And then a week later, they sent me 10,000 rubber caps and said, send these out to everybody that needs one. And we're going to start putting them on the machines, to mitigate that. So plus we're 60% of the global market space. So they listen to us. 66%.
So
Almost.
yeah,
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 say
that's
almost 70.
that's
So
Remember,
helpful.
Brian, remember when I recommended the stops on the crumb trays? When we talked about it, I said when the front crumb trays on the 35s first came out, and I said that
I don't remember what we talked about 2 weeks ago, much less.
Well, you and
that.
I, when the crumb trays first came out, I was one of the ones that got one of the first crumb trays on the 35s.
That's right. That's right.
And they didn't have no stops, positive stops on the backs of them. And I said they should before someone does something stupid and claims they got hurt from it. It was the next shipment that came in, they had the stops put on them.
Yeah, they're super reactive to whatever we say, as far as that kind of stuff goes.
and
So
so we've
Brian,
got
you kind of feedback. What I heard is that essentially you're managing 60% of their output to the marketplace. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and,
So-
and we have meetings with them. I mean, we had a wonderful meeting the other day with Thunder China, and we're on the same page. So it's not like they're a separate entity. It's Thunder Global, and we're a distributor of their product here. That is, separate bottom line, but
Yeah,
So, yeah,
we're all
so we-
working toward the same goals. So go ahead, Chris.
Yep.
I know you would.
and we work directly with them, right? So we've got our ticket system that we share. It's partitioned out. So we've got direct contact. We tag them in tickets. They respond back. We've got other outlets to communicate with them as well. Always sending them things. They're sending us stuff back. I coordinate, like when I'm doing the refurbs. So it's very open back and forth. They're actually going to be here in Vegas in a couple of months, so we'll get to hang out with them there as well. But when we see issues or they notify us of an issue, it's definitely a two-way communication. We get that stuff out there. We're not 100% perfect either, right? Sometimes things get miswired and misplaced or whatever, and so we just fix that and we provide the feedback to them. It happens, right? There's still a human element involved in assembling these machines, and
Yeah.
in my mind, it's
Plus-
how you take care of it.
It is. And plus, they had growing pains. They just moved to a building that's twice as big and then got 2 additional buildings. Plus, they got more storage. So they've experienced a lot of growth in part because we have been. So they're hiring new people and getting them trained on the lines. So we have seen a few upticks here and there of certain little things, but we monitor all of that stuff. We have analytics on every issue because we always
Okay.
keep everything separate so that we can monitor mean time between failure rates and things like that.
Okay. Well, thanks for addressing that. I think that you made some good points, and not the least of which is the amount of their market that you represent. So it's in their interest to have you healthy financially.
Absolutely.
And if they place you at risk financially because they're sending you crap, it's going to hurt them. So got you on that one. How many folks actually use the air pump that comes with the machine versus hanging
good amount.
a quiet air compressor on it?
We do.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if I just had to shoot from the hip, I'd say 50-50. There's quite a few people that want to go and get that extra performance out of the extra air, out of using an
Yeah.
external compressor. If you already have shop air plumbed in your place, you have a perfect reason, to slap a regulator on there and just plumb in. But there's a lot of people that maybe only engrave coasters or only engrave cutting boards. Maybe that's all their machine does all day long. Usually that kind of stuff, the pump is sufficient. It's still sufficient for whatever we spec that it'll cut with the stock pump. You definitely get a big increase in performance, with that external
Okay.
air.
I
you have any-
regularly cut solid cherry 1 inch thick. So we needed the extra air and the 4-inch head.
Yeah. Thicker stuff, it really matters, and it really shows on acrylic. Acrylic's a weird animal because you have to walk that fine line between not giving it so much air that it solidifies before it's homogeneous or
Yeah.
whatever and has that nice
Yeah.
flame polished edge, and not get the striations in it and not having a fire. So if you put too much air on acrylic, you can even see on thicker acrylic how it occludes the air, as it gets thicker, and it actually
Yeah.
gets to be a better cut on the way down. So thicker materials, I would always, if you're cutting them anyway, if you're just engraving them, it doesn't matter. But I think it's a good investment, for the reward you get from it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine the machine that would reside here would be a very significant amount of cutting, not just engraving.
Right.
Now with that, it looks like you got a nice little dust system right over your shoulder.
I do. I've got several of them in here.
Okay.
I've
Don't
got
tie your laser into a dust system. Make sure your exhaust
no,
is
I don't know if you can see it or not. Yeah, you can. You can catch a glimpse of a window right
yeah.
over my shoulder there, right there.
Yep.
My idea is to put the fiber laser and a gantry laser over there so that I can puke the exhaust gas out out through
Pop it
that
out the
window.
window.
Yeah, because
Perfect.
I can't pin the walls are masonry walls, and most of them are 12 inches thick, so I can't get through the wall. But over there where those windows are, I can easily put an exhaust out. So right now on the fiber laser, I use an axial flow fan that's pretty quiet. You don't need a whole lot of air movement for that. But of course, if you're cutting on a CO2 gantry, I think the problem becomes a little bit bigger in terms of smoke
Yeah.
generation.
And
So
I think we're pushing about 700 CFM on the 51s, aren't we, on the 8-inch fans? I can look at
Well,
the
it might,
specs.
yeah, it might be
yeah,
rated for that, but through the enclosure, it's not gonna.
Yeah.
that's a lot of air. I
Is your
guess that
building
fan's pretty
conditioned?
noisy, huh?
No, it's an inline. It's not
Oh,
the
is it?
centrifugal fan anymore. It's an axial inline DC motor
Oh,
fan. There's a little more
good.
lag, but it's
Yeah,
quiet enough
yeah,
where you can run it. Yeah, we
yeah.
switched to that last year, a couple of years ago. It all kind of runs together for me.
Yeah, those centrifugal fans get a little bit noisy.
They do. They move
By the
that
way, I
air
did.
though.
Yeah. Oh, they do. Yeah. Yeah, no question. They'll push some air. One thing I did notice on your website is you got the change log on there, which I appreciated. There was a used machine here locally, and I couldn't really get a line on when it was built. The guy was not very forthcoming with information, and I looked at the top of it, and I could tell that just from looking at some of the things that have been added over the last couple of years or so, I could tell that it was probably a machine that was 3 or 4 years old. So I like that website that you got because of the info. I've been delinquent in not digging a little bit deeper, and I'll do that, of course. Is there a current indicator on the machine, an amperage indicator?
There is for the laser power supply. If you're referring to how much output current's going to the tube,
Yeah.
it's in the back and it's integrated either on the laser power supply for the Nova 35 and up,
Yeah.
or there's a separate analog one for the 24.
Okay.
But they're not up front and center. because we're calibrated. You
Okay.
can run it 100% and not exceed the maximum current.
Yeah, that's fine. Uh, is there an hour meter of usage on it? There's an
There is.
indicator for that as well?
There
Okay.
is.
I don't remember if I saw that or I just
It
assumed that it was there.
it's stored in the
One,
Rita,
It's
and you upload it through controller info out of the controller.
okay, I got you.
kinda,
All right.
So like we got an article, I think Brian's about to pull it up. If you're going to buy a used machine, this is what to look for. One, pull the hours. It'll tell you how far the machine's actually physically moved. Maybe it's gone miles versus to the moon and back, and it'll tell you hours of laser time, hours of moving around and not doing anything, hours that it's been powered up, stuff like that.
Yeah. Idle
Kind of like
time.
odometer truck. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
I linked it in the chat. I'll link the inspection and valuation article, and it has finding information about your equipment. Getting controller info from Lightburn is the actual one, but that link will pop up on there on getting the information so that you can see that.
Okay. Do most of your users use Lightburn?
Yes, it comes with the machine, and that's a Thunder USA thing, not a global thing. We do that for our clients just because
Yeah.
Lightburn's so much better than RD Works. But yeah, the 99% of our users use Lightburn. We still have a few people using RD Works floating out there, and it's still real popular in Europe and other places. So
Okay. Yeah, I like Lightburn. I use it on I have a diode laser that I use on a CNC machine, and I use it for that for photographs, and I use it on the fiber laser as well.
mhm.
It's good. It's really good software.
Yeah.
From it's not the best for design, but for generating, controlling the machine, it's really nice. So with a Thunder Laser, to get a file to the machine, you need to stick your laptop over there and hook it up with the USB. Is that right?
No, you can connect directly via USB. You can connect directly via Ethernet. You can network the machine and have it on your actual physical network and access it from any other device that can hit the network. Or you can not be tethered at all, and either use a wireless adapter or a USB stick and just transfer it back and forth with a USB
Okay.
stick. So there's multiple protocols for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So with where you're sitting, and if it was over on the other side of the room by that window, you could just either grab a USB or run you a cable. A lot of people just build a stand near their machine and throw the laptop up there as well.
Yeah, that's probably what I do is just use it over there. The laptop that I use is the one I'm using at the moment for this. Down here, I have like all of us, I have other machines elsewhere. But this one is the shop machine, so it'd probably get
Yeah.
moved over there.
Well, what's been my go-to is these little HP Elite desks. It's like $100 for a computer that runs Windows 10. Maybe you can get them now with Windows 11, and it's everything
Yeah,
you need to run Lightburn and EasyCAD if you run it. And it's the size of a couple decks of cards. You could sticky tape it to the computer and then remote into that and have it as your
yeah,
control, or even put a monitor over there. But $100, you can't beat it. And it's got
yeah.
networking, it's got Wi-Fi, USB. So it's fantastic.
And so,
Brian,
Chris,
you
tell me
set
what
my
that is.
All right. What it is it's a HP Elite book, I think is what
HP
they're
Elite. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, Elite desk. We've got in one article about doing multiple machines, but it's like 100 to $120 on Amazon.
Okay. Tommy, what are you and Joyce doing? How do you get your files to your machine, and how do you control them?
Okay, so Brian's going to have to help me with this one because I can't explain it well. 9 times out of 10, she is, because we run Macs. So we're through the
Okay.
Ethernet. It's direct. So we've got the 2 machines hooked to one computer, 2 Lightburn instances. But Brian has us set up now with the Ethernet because we're hardwired to do something. So Brian, if you remember whatever the hell you did, to fix me, go right ahead and explain it.
I think we took both of your lasers and the computer that it was, or wait a minute. Did we
Yeah,
hook
you got
well,
a hub somewhere.
yeah,
I've
I
got
think
a
we're using a
hub,
hub.
so it's not really it's not really it's wireless. It
But it's
can
still
be wired,
wired.
but it's
Yeah.
wired.
The machine is wired, but you can access it from wireless computers on your network, basically.
Yes.
So, and
So
that's
if
a
she
traditional networking instance, whether it's a printer or whatever, it'll hook up the same way. You either physically plug the laser into your primary network if you have a drop or a hub or a switch or a router. If you don't, you can use a wireless gaming adapter or something. We've got articles on that to actually connect also. But I think we've got both of his hardwired into a hub, and then that goes to his local area network that plugs into the router or the modem or wherever that goes, and then he accesses his normal network as he usually would, and then both of his lasers can be controlled from that same network. So you
which
can run
if she's
multiple
having
instances of Lightburn. That way you
yeah,
have one Lightburn on for one machine, and you can have the other one dual monitors. So good idea for something like that.
I have a
So there's
TV
a bunch of
TV
options.
screen.
Oh
So I
yeah,
have my
big one.
laptop that I take, in and out of the shop. And then I have a TV screen mounted right there at my standing desk. And my standing desk is in between my two machines so that I can actually be at my desk working on the next thing while they're still running so I can still observe to make sure that nothing's catching fire or whatever.
Boyce, you
And so
mentioned a little bit ago that you were cutting some pretty thick cherry lumber with your machine. What power level, what wattage machine do you have? Is it
We have
100 or 130?
the 130 watt.
Okay.
so we did an experiment trying with a 4-inch head. Just what was it, 4 and 80 or 4 and 90, 4 millimeters a second and 90% power.
Yeah, 85, 90% power, something like that.
Had we slowed it down to about 1 or 2, then we would have gotten clean cuts through everything. But at 4, it gets it to a point, and I just take it in and run it through the planer, and I get to my thickness that I need. It's easier for me to clean up. It's one pass for her. So our workflow is a little bit different because sometimes it's, instead of sanding, it's easier just to one pass. Let me run it through the planer and thin it down a little bit. We deal a lot with rough cut lumber, rough cut
Yeah.
kiln dried. And it's just, for me, it's instead of spending however long taking it from a little over 1 inch to, 3/4 of an inch or 7/8, it's easier for me just to pass it through, skip plane it, and then give it to her. And then I can mill it to final size after it's been run through the laser.
Okay.
Right. I'm going to stop the recording.